The New York Giants are suddenly facing major panic after a new medical update on Malik Nabers' knee reportedly revealed the injury is far more complicated than fans originally thought. And now, with his return timeline becoming uncertain, people think this could completely change the Giants' entire season plans. ESPN NFL insider Adam Schefter appeared on the Pat McAfee show and cast serious doubt on whether Nabers would be ready for the start of the 2026 NFL regular season, and he made no effort to soften what he was saying. "I just don't like the way that any of this sounds." That's what Schefter said. Not speculation, not hedging. There's a second knee surgery. There's scar tissue and stiffness that needed to be addressed. It's a complicated procedure. They don't know if he'll be ready for opening day. And opening night against the Dallas Cowboys at home is in jeopardy. He went further and said it would be more unlikely that Nabers plays that game than likely. That was Adam Schefter, not a blogger, not an anonymous source. The most plugged-in NFL reporter in the business, dropping that on national television. And then hours later, Giants head coach John Harbaugh stepped in front of microphones and made it worse. The New York Giants don't know when their star wide receiver will be back. Nabers tore the ACL in his right knee in September. He underwent the original surgery, which included a full meniscus repair. Several weeks later, a second surgery was then required to remove scar tissue that was causing stiffness, and it has the Giants hopeful but uncertain if he will return for Week 1. Harbaugh stood at the podium after the team's third organized team activity practice and said the quiet part out loud. "He's in the middle of it. It's such a hard thing. It's an ACL, and whatever else he had in that knee. Not a simple knee injury. So he's in the slog of it, the grind of it, I would say. Not a simple knee." That phrase landed like a gut punch across the entire Giants fan base. Harbaugh said it was impossible to predict when Nabers will be ready to return. And those words, impossible to predict, matter because this is a head coach. Head coaches are trained to be calculated. They are trained to give measured, professional answers that don't spook fan bases or tank a player's trade value or shake a locker room. When a head coach steps outside of that playbook and says the return date for his best offensive player is impossible to predict, that is not a casual comment. That is a man telling you something without telling you everything. The Giants opened their season in a Sunday night football game on September 13th against the Dallas Cowboys at MetLife Stadium. That game was already circled in red on every Giants fan's calendar. It was the first big moment of the John Harbaugh era in New York. And now the question, the one that's keeping the front office up at night, is whether the player who was supposed to be the face of that moment will even suit up for it. Nabers wasn't out at Thursday's OTA practice. He has, however, been in the building, rehabbing the knee each day. He's there. He's working. But working in the training room during OTAs is a different universe from running routes at full speed in September. And right now, no one in that building can tell you when that bridge gets crossed. Former NFL head team Dr. David J. Chow weighed in on the situation and said what a lot of people were thinking, not necessarily a disaster, but certainly not good news. And that's the range that Giants fans are now stuck in. Not a disaster, but not good news either. Somewhere in the terrible middle ground between those two. To understand why this second surgery complicates everything, you have to understand the full arc of what happened to Malik Nabers, because the original injury was already complicated before any of this second procedure news came out. On September 28th, during a home game at MetLife Stadium, a game the Giants won 21-18 against the Los Angeles Chargers, Nabers landed awkwardly on his right knee while attempting to catch a deep pass from quarterback Jackson Dart. An MRI later confirmed he had suffered a torn right ACL, officially ending his sophomore season. Nabers had torn his ACL and partially torn his meniscus in that Week 4 win over the Chargers. That's not one injury, that's two injuries happening at the same time, in the same knee, on the same play. ACL tears alone are season enders. ACL tears combined with meniscus damage introduce a level of complexity into the recovery process that changes everything about the timeline, the surgical approach, and the rehab. And here's where things got more complicated from the start. Nabers suffered that torn ACL and partially torn meniscus in September, but he didn't have surgery until about a month after the injury. NFL Network's Ian Rappaport noted it was because Nabers wanted to prehab the injury. The idea of prehab is that players strengthen and stretch the area around the knee, just to make rehab better when they eventually have surgery. So the surgery itself didn't happen until late October. 1 month after the initial injury, Nabers had surgery on October 28th. The clock on a typical ACL recovery already a 10 to 12-month road at minimum. Didn't even start ticking until that point. If you're doing the math on that timeline in your head right now, you're landing somewhere around late August or early September 2026, just barely in time. Just barely. And that was the best case scenario. That was the version of events where everything went according to plan. The original surgery included a full meniscus repair. That phrase, full meniscus repair, is significant. There are two approaches to a torn meniscus. Or you can attempt a full repair, which is the more conservative, more protective approach. The Giants and Nabers chose the repair. That's the right call for a 22-year-old receiver whose career is supposed to span another decade. But it extends the recovery window, and it introduces the exact kind of scar tissue complications that are now creating headlines in May 2026. More recently, Nabers had a second surgery on his injured knee that was described as a cleanup procedure, with the specific goal of removing scar tissue that was causing stiffness. On paper, a scar tissue cleanup sounds minor. In practice, it is another surgery, another procedure under general anesthesia, another round of post-operative inflammation, another restart on certain elements of the rehab process. Sources told The Athletic's Dan Duggan that this second surgery took place multiple weeks ago, and the Giants remain hopeful that Nabers will be ready for Week 1 of the 2026 season. But multiple weeks ago and hopeful are doing a lot of heavy lifting in that sentence. Harbaugh and the Giants have been less optimistic about Nabers' return in recent months. Originally, they thought he might be ready for the start of training camp. Now, that ship seems to have sailed, and they appear to have their fingers crossed about Week 1. That's the evolution of this situation in plain terms. In February, they were saying training camp. By May, they're saying maybe Week 1, and even that maybe now comes with a visible asterisk. Nabers has had to deal with the mental side of his rehab and recovery not going exactly as planned. I can't speak for him, but I think it's probably the first time he's been hurt like this. You know, Harbaugh said, with this being Nabers' first significant injury at the pro level, Harbaugh noted the Giants are doing their best to keep the young receiver engaged. My experience with guys the first time you have a serious injury, it's tough because it's new for him. Harbaugh said, it's a tough process. Our job is to stay close to him, to stay with him, and his job is to trust, work hard. He's doing his job, and the trainers and docs are doing their job, and he'll be back. That's a coach fighting to hold the tone steady, but the underlying message is clear. This is uncharted territory for Nabers, and it's uncharted territory for the entire Giants organization to fully grasp the weight of what's happening with this knee. Why every update, every Schefter appearance, every Harbaugh press conference is being dissected with such intensity. You have to understand exactly who Malik Nabers is and what he did to earn that level of attention. Malik Nabers was born on July 28, 2003. He played college football for the LSU Tigers, finishing as their all-time leader in receiving yards and earning unanimous All-American honors in 2023. He was selected 6th overall by the Giants in the 2024 NFL Draft and set numerous rookie wide receiver and franchise records. The Giants spent that 6th pick on him in a draft that had no shortage of compelling options. They bet their future on him, and within months, he made them look like geniuses. As a rookie in 2024, Nabers played in 15 games, finishing with 179 targets and 109 receptions for 1,204 yards and 7 touchdowns. He earned his first Pro Bowl nod after ranking 2nd in the NFL in targets and receptions per game. Let those numbers breathe for a moment. His 109 receptions set a new franchise record, surpassing Steve Smith's mark of 107 receptions in 2009, and they are also the most by a rookie wide receiver, passing Puka Nacua's 105 receptions in 2023. Nabers holds the NFL record for most receptions by a wide receiver in their first professional season. He also became the youngest wide receiver with a multi-touchdown game in NFL history, at 21 years and 56 days of age, a mark that was previously held by Mike Evans. He was the first player in NFL history to put up at least 20 receptions and 3 touchdown catches in his first 3 career games. The comparisons weren't just to current players. They were reaching back through the history of the franchise. Nabers was the Giants' first Pro Bowl wide receiver since Odell Beckham Jr. was selected to his 3rd consecutive Pro Bowl in 2016. He was also the first Giants rookie Pro Bowler since Beckham himself. For a franchise that has been clawing for identity and relevance for years, Nabers wasn't just a receiver. He was a lightning rod. He was the proof of concept for the rebuild. As a rookie, Nabers recorded 109 receptions for 1,204 yards and 7 touchdowns en route to that Pro Bowl selection. And he seemed well on his way to another big year in 2025, putting up 18 catches for 271 yards and 2 touchdowns in just 4 games. On September 14, 2025, in Week 2 of his sophomore season, Nabers caught 9 passes for 167 yards and 2 touchdowns in a 40-37 overtime loss to the Dallas Cowboys. Among those receptions, he caught a 48-yard touchdown pass from Russell Wilson with 25 seconds left to give the Giants a 37-34 lead. He was explosive, he was electric, and he was doing it against one of the conference's best defenses on prime time. 2 weeks later, his season was over. Through 19 NFL games, Nabers has 127 receptions for 1,475 yards and 9 touchdowns. That is what this player has done in less than a season and a half of professional football. Now imagine what the Giants and what Jackson Dart have been missing, and you start to understand the depth of the concern spreading across the organization right now. Former Giants running back and current WFAN sports radio personality Tiki Barber doesn't see the latest news as routine. The Giants' all-time rushing yards leader thinks Nabers could face complications going forward. Barber referenced his son's own experience with a torn meniscus, which effectively ended his football career, and he does not want Nabers to suffer a similar fate. That's a man with personal experience with this exact type of injury, speaking from a place of genuine concern, not hot-take radio noise. And the people listening to him aren't dismissing it. The Giants didn't just build their offense around Malik Nabers. They built their future around Malik Nabers, and the two things are connected in ways that make this injury update hit differently than a standard star player injury update. Nabers didn't get much of an opportunity to play with rookie quarterback Jackson Dart last season, but he is expected to be Dart's #1 target in 2026. That sentence tells the whole story. Those two players, a second-year quarterback and a third-year wide receiver, were supposed to grow together this season. The connection between a young quarterback and his top receiver is not just a statistic. It's a developmental bond. Every rep they take together, every route combination installed, every trust built on imperfect throws caught by instinct, all of it translates to wins later. Nabers is expected to be the Giants' #1 receiver and the top option for quarterback Jackson Dart, who is without 2 of his top targets this spring. Darius Slayton is also sidelined following core muscle surgery. Harbaugh said Slayton is expected to be ready by the start of training camp, but as of right now, Dart is running an entire OTA program without either of his projected top 2 targets on the field. The Giants aren't blind to this problem. They've been proactive. The team signed tight end Isaiah Likely and added receivers Darnell Mooney and Calvin Austin III. After losing Wan'Dale Robinson in free agency. Additionally, the Giants used a 3rd-round draft pick to select Malachi Fields out of Notre Dame, trading up into the 3rd round to land the big-bodied receiver. General Manager Joe Schoen described Fields' role in the wide receiver room plainly. He will be the power forward. The physical traits of the former Notre Dame player allow him to use his body to displace defenders, similar to how a basketball player protects the ball in the paint. Fields stands 6'4" and weighs 218 pounds, which made him stand out in college football. Head coach John Harbaugh has moved away from the shorter, yards-after-catch receivers that were a staple of the Brian Daboll offenses, gravitating instead toward bigger-bodied targets who offer larger catch radii and more physicality on contested catches. That philosophy shift cannot be understated for Dart, who is entering his 2nd season and whose areas of improvement include better accuracy on deep balls of 20-plus air yards. The data backs this up entirely. Dart completed 32.5% of his deep pass attempts to receivers standing 6'2" or taller, compared to just 25% against shorter targets. Harbaugh is not just building for aesthetics, he is building for Jackson Dart's actual statistical tendencies, his actual strengths, and Nabers at 6 foot with elite route running and separation. Fits that system in a way none of the free agent additions can fully replicate. Fox Sports' Ralph Vacchiano ranks the personnel around Dart 20th among the NFL's 32 teams, writing, "If Malik Nabers hadn't torn his ACL last season, the Giants would be higher on this list, maybe much higher." They have a deep receiving core without Nabers, especially after signing Darnell Mooney and drafting Malachi Fields. But he quoted a scout who said that Nabers changes everything. Nabers changes everything. Not Nabers would help. Not Nabers would be an upgrade. Nabers changes everything. And right now, with the second knee surgery and the unanswered questions about the timeline, that phrase cuts both ways. Without Nabers, Jackson Dart will have to make the offense run through the likes of Darius Slayton and Isaiah Likely. Decent talent, but enough? That's the question nobody in the building wants to answer out loud. New York needed to make a move at wide receiver after losing Wan'Dale Robinson to the Tennessee Titans in free agency. After Nabers' injury in 2025, Robinson stepped up and was by far Dart's most reliable target, leading all Giants receivers with 92 catches, 1,144 yards, and 4 touchdowns in 16 regular season games. Robinson is gone now. The safety net from 2025 has been signed to a division rival, and the player who was supposed to make Robinson's departure irrelevant is the one currently rehabbing from his second procedure in 8 months. The Giants were 16th in the NFL in points per game last season at 22.4, the exact midpoint of the league. There are several reasons they could be better than that. If Nabers and Cam Skatibo are healthy and productive for all or most of 2026, that would be a plus. Improvement from Dart in year 2 would be another. Everything tracks back to Nabers being available. Remove him from the equation, and the Giants are a middle-of-the-pack offense, trying to compete in one of the toughest divisions in football. Now we get to the part that nobody wants to talk about directly. The real question sitting underneath all of the optimistic front office language, the Harbaugh he'll-be-back reassurances, and the carefully worded injury updates. What does this mean, not for Week 1, but for the actual trajectory of Malik Nabers and the New York Giants? For weeks, insiders had been reporting the Giants were hopeful about Nabers' chances to return for a Week 1 showdown against the Dallas Cowboys. But Harbaugh's recent comments don't reflect a ton of confidence. Though the Giants still hope for Nabers to return in time for the regular season, Harbaugh admitted there is a lot of uncertainty going on. Hope has been doing an enormous amount of lifting in this entire conversation. Giants general manager Joe Schoen told reporters back in February that Nabers was trending to hopefully be ready for training camp, adding, "Things can change, but that's the hope." By May, the hope has shifted from training camp to Week 1. The timeline has already slipped once. The question is whether it slips again. While there is a good chance Nabers will start training camp on the PUP list, so long as there are no further setbacks that put his recovery back to square one. That's all that anyone can really ask for at this stage. The PUP list, physically unable to perform, carries real consequences. A player who begins training camp on the PUP list can be activated at any time. But if they remain on it when the regular season begins, they are required to sit out a minimum of 4 games. 4 games at the start of 2026 without Malik Nabers means 4 games at minimum of Jackson Dart running an offense built around his presence. Without that presence, the first 4 weeks of the season, in a year where Dart needs to take a developmental step forward, without his #1 target, that is not a minor thing. There are fans who will brush off concerns as an overreaction, but a serious injury can certainly cause future problems. If an explosive talent like Nabers is forced to endure chronic pain, his effectiveness could become diminished. And that's the darkest thread running through all of this. Not Week 1. Not even 2026 as a whole. The longer-term question, is the player that comes back from this the same player who walked out in Week 4 of 2025? This is why the Giants should not assume the worst-case scenario. That's the cautious, responsible perspective, and it's worth holding on to. But it has to exist alongside the honest acknowledgement that this is the second surgery, not the first. The recovery is not clean, and it has not been linear. Harbaugh said, if he's out there, great. If he's not out there, great. We'll be ready to go either way, but I know he's fighting like crazy to do his best to be out there, and he's with the guys every day. That's the right thing for a head coach to say. Protect the player. Maintain the culture. Keep the locker room from fracturing into camps of doubt. But read that quote carefully. There is zero certainty in it. He's not saying Nabers will be there. He's saying we'll be ready either way. To kick off the season with a win, the Giants will need to outscore the Cowboys' high-powered offense, led by Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, and George Pickens. Last year, the Russell Wilson-led Giants went toe-to-toe in a 40-37 overtime loss in that same matchup. That was with Nabers going nuclear. 167 yards, 2 touchdowns. Now Prescott has a full offseason with a revamped offensive core, and the Giants are heading into that same building on the same Sunday Night Football stage, potentially without the player who made that game competitive last year. The bottom line here is this: Malik Nabers is still one of the most gifted receivers in the entire NFL. One scout told Fox Sports, "I didn't think he played great as a rookie in 2024. He had too many drops, and his quarterback play was awful. But look at the numbers he put up. 109 catches for 1,204 yards and 7 touchdowns. With better quarterback play and help around him, he could be a monster." The ceiling on this player, when healthy and surrounded by actual offensive talent, is massive. The hope is that Nabers will be operating at close to full capacity by late summer, because quarterback Jackson Dart and New York's Matt Nagy-led offense need him to regularly disrupt opposing defenses next season. The word hope. Again, that word is going to define the first months of the Giants' 2026 season. The Giants have done the right things in the offseason, hiring Harbaugh, signing Likely, adding Mooney and Austin, drafting Fields. They have built contingency plans around the contingency plans, but there is no contingency plan for Malik Nabers. Not really. Not one that leaves Jackson Dart in the same position. Not one that gives this offense the same ceiling. What we know: 2 surgeries, a complicated knee, no clear return date, and a season opener against the Dallas Cowboys on Sunday Night Football in September. What we don't know whether the player who walks out of that tunnel at MetLife Stadium in September will be the same Malik Nabers who electrified the league as a rookie in 2024, or a version of him still fighting through the slog of a recovery that has refused to go according to plan. For the New York Giants and Jackson Dart, that question is everything.